Truth is like mercury. It is fluid, hard to hold on to, but reflects everything with chilling clarity. Experience the changing nature of reality in our latest high-tech cinematic thrillers. Subscribe now and follow the flow of the truth as it reveals itself to the world today.
The invitation to my nephew's first birthday party had been sitting on our fridge for 3 weeks, held up by a magnet, shaped like a sunflower that my daughter Poppy had picked out at a farmer's market last fall. She was 4 years old and had asked me every single morning since the invitation arrived whether today was the day we were going to the party. Every single morning I had told her not yet, but soon. She had started sleeping with the invitation on her nightstand, which I thought was the kind of thing that would be funny to tell her someday when she was older. I was not thinking about that on the morning of the party when I was braiding her hair, and she asked me for the 11th time if her dress was pretty enough. It was a pale green dress with white smocking across the chest, the one she called her garden dress, and yes, it was absolutely pretty enough. And yes, her hair was going to be perfect. And yes, we were going to see baby Owen. And yes, there would be cake. My husband Joel had loaded the gift into the car the night before. We had spent more time than was probably reasonable picking it out, a wooden pull-along toy in the shape of a duck, and a soft photo book we had made with pictures of Poppy and Owen, from the few times my brother and his wife had brought him to visit. Poppy had helped me pick the photos. She had pointed at one of herself kissing Owen's forehead in my mother's kitchen and said, "That's my favorite one," because he looked surprised. She was not wrong. He did look surprised. We were 15 minutes away from my brother's house when my phone buzzed on the center console. Joel glanced at it. "It's your sister-in-law," he said. "I know," I said. I'd seen the name. Renata. I let it ring. She called again 30 seconds later. Joel didn't say anything. He was like that. He noticed things and gave me space to decide what to do with them without editorializing. I answered on the third call. Renata's voice when she spoke was careful in a specific way I recognized. Not upset careful. Management careful. The voice of someone who had rehearsed the call. "Hey," she said. "I'm glad I caught you. Are you on your way?" "We're almost there," I said. "So the thing is, since I was coming from a place of love." She paused. My stomach did something small and unpleasant. "We're keeping today really intimate. Just immediate family." Joel's foot eased very slightly off the gas. I said, "We are immediate family. I'm Griffin's sister." "Right," she said. "Yes, of course. But I mean the 4 parents and Griffin and I and Owen. Just the 6 of us, really. It's going to be overstimulating for him if there are too many people. And Dr. Harwell said at his 9-month appointment that he's sensitive to large groups, so we're just trying to keep it calm for him." She kept talking. I had stopped processing the words. I was looking at the road ahead, the familiar street signs, the gas station on the corner I had driven past 100 times on the way to my brother's house. "Are you still there?" she asked. "I'm here," I said. And then I said, "Poppy has been looking forward to this for 3 weeks." "I know," she said, and her voice did something that wasn't quite sorry. She had practiced the apology too. "But she's 4, so she'll bounce back. Kids are resilient, right? And we'll plan something for just the cousins soon, I promise." I ended the call. Joel had pulled to a complete stop in a parking lot, a pharmacy I didn't usually stop at without me saying anything. He put the car in park. "What happened?" he said. Not a question exactly, more like an open door. "She's uninviting us," I said, "from Owen's first birthday party. She said it's immediate family only." Joel was quiet for a moment. "Griffin knew about this call?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. In the back seat, Poppy had been very focused on explaining something to the small stuffed rabbit she carried everywhere. A rabbit named Carrot, who had one ear slightly floppier than the other from being held too much. She looked up now with the perceptiveness that children develop when adult conversations stop making sense. "Are we there?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "Can you tell Carrot I said hi?" She considered this. "Carrot already knows you," she said with great logic. But she went back to her rabbit. I stared out through the windshield. The sun was doing that thing it does on October mornings, where it sits low in gold and makes everything look warmer than it is. I thought about the wooden duck in the trunk, about the photo book with the picture of Poppy kissing Owen's forehead, about Poppy asking me every morning. I was holding my phone. I called my brother. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I texted him. "Did you know Renata was going to call us?" No response. I watched the little delivered notification sit there under the message without turning in to read. Joel didn't start the car. He was giving me time, the way he always did, without making a production of giving me time. He just sat there with me in the pharmacy parking lot, while October light came through the windshield, and Poppy told Carrot about cake. "We should go home," I finally said. "Okay," he said. "But first can we tell Poppy?" I asked. "Can you tell her?" "I can't do it right now without." I stopped. "Yeah," he said. "I've got it." He turned around in his seat to face the back seat with the specific kind of cheerful calm that I have watched him deploy in genuine emergencies. The same face he made when Poppy split her chin open at the playground and needed stitches. The face that said everything is fine and I am completely in charge of this situation. "Hey," he said. "So the party got moved to a different day. But here's what I'm thinking." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Have you ever been to that place on Millbrook Road? The one with the strawberry pancakes?" Poppy's eyes went enormous. "With the syrup that comes in the little jug?" "The exact one." She looked at Carrot, then back at Joel. She was doing the math. Her expression was very serious. She said, "I'm still wearing the garden dress." Wear it everywhere, Joel said. That dress has been waiting for a reason, she giggled. It was a real one, sudden and high, and it hit me somewhere in the sternum. We drove to the pancake place. I sat in the passenger seat and I watched the familiar streets go by, and I thought about Renata's voice on the phone, that careful managed tone. A place of love, she had said. The thought arrived slowly, the way thoughts do when they're things you've been avoiding. This was not a spontaneous decision. Someone had thought about this. Someone had decided we were not worth a seat at that table, that Poppy was not worth a seat at that table, and then someone had called to deliver that decision with the vocabulary of kindness, wrapped around it like wrapping paper around something that could cut you. I texted my brother again when we were at the restaurant, waiting for pancakes. Just call me when you can. Still nothing. Joel ordered for us. Strawberry pancakes for Blueberry for himself. And without asking, he ordered me the lemon ricotta ones because he knew I would want them, but would have looked at the price and talked myself into something cheaper. He did this without comment, without fanfare. Just ordered them and handed the menus back to the server. Papa ate her pancakes with methodical dedication. She gave Carrot a tour of the restaurant, pointing out the chalkboard menu and the window overlooking the parking lot. She announced to no one in particular that she thought the syrup jug was the best invention. When she excused herself to use the bathroom with Joel, I sat alone at the table, and I looked at my phone, and I thought about my brother. Griffin and I had grown up 2 years apart in a house where the rules had been applied unevenly in ways that neither of us was supposed to notice or acknowledge. He was the one our parents had always tilted towards slightly, not cruelly, not with intention I think, but with the specific gravitational pull that families sometimes develop toward one child without quite deciding to. He'd been the one they called first with news. The one whose career they understood. The one our mother had helped move into 4 apartments while I had rented a truck and done it myself because it never occurred to anyone to offer. I had stopped waiting for the offer after the 3rd apartment. I told myself I preferred doing things my own way. That story was easier to live with than the alternative. Griffin was not a bad person. I want to be clear about that. He was someone who had never been asked to notice the tilt, so he hadn't. That's different from being bad. But it had been accumulating in ways I'd gotten very skilled at not looking at directly. Renata I had never quite figured out. She was polished in a way that made it hard to find the edges of her. She was always technically kind, remembered birthdays, sent nice texts, but there was something beneath that politeness that I had never been able to name. An accounting, maybe? Like she was always keeping track of something. Joel and Poppy came back from the bathroom. Poppy had wet the cuffs of her garden dress, washing her hands, and seemed genuinely delighted by this fact. I'm sparkling, she said, holding out her damp wrists. Extremely, Joel confirmed. He sat down and met my eyes and just slightly tilted his head. A question. I shook my head once. He nodded and picked up his fork. We drove home after. Poppy fell asleep in the car in the way that children do without warning. One moment narrating a story, the next completely gone. Joel carried her inside without waking her. I sat on the front porch steps in my coat and looked at the street and waited for I didn't know what. My phone rang at 4:17, my mother. I hesitated, then answered. Your father and I just left Griffin's, she said. Her voice was different than I expected. Not the smooth conciliatory tone she usually deployed when she sensed I was upset about something. She sounded tight, like she was holding something behind her teeth. How was the party? I said. Not warmly. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I didn't know, she said. I want you to know that. I didn't know until we got there and your father asked where you and Poppy were. She said you had something come up. She said we had something come up, I repeated. I watched a car pass on the street, a dog being walked. The ordinary Friday afternoon world. Your father asked Griffin directly, my mother said. And Griffin, she paused. I could hear her breathing. Griffin said Renata had thought it would be better if the party stayed small. That's the word he used. Better. Did he know before today? I said. She was quiet again, and in that quiet I had my answer. Mom, I said. I know, she said. He let her call me. He knew she was going to call and he let her do it and he didn't warn me. Didn't call ahead, didn't say a word. I sat with that for a moment. The October afternoon had gone gray while I was sitting on the porch, cloud cover moving in from the west. I could feel the cold coming up through the steps. Your father is very upset, my mother said quietly. He didn't say anything at the party because, well, you know how he is. He didn't want to cause a scene in front of the baby. But he asked me to call you to tell you that he has some things he wants to say, and he would like to say them to everyone together. And he would like you to come to our house on Sunday. Why Sunday? I said. He's asked Griffin and Renata to come as well. I think your father. She paused. I think he has had some things accumulating for a long time and today was the last one. I didn't know what to say to that. My father was a man who expressed his feelings through behavior rather than words. The kind of man who showed up with a truck without being asked, who remembered what you'd mentioned once, in passing about a book you wanted, and then bought it 6 months later, who told you he was proud of you by just staying in the room. He was not a man who called family meetings. In 40 years of marriage and 3 decades of parenting, I had never heard him call a family meeting. Okay, I said, we'll be there. After she hung up, I sat on the steps a while longer. Joel came outside eventually and sat down next to me without asking why I was still outside. He had made tea. He handed me one of the mugs. My dad wants everyone over Sunday, I said. Okay, he said. I don't know what he's going to say. Joel thought about it. I think that's probably the point, he said. Sunday came. We drove to my parents' house with Poppy in the back seat, asking if Grandpa would have the good crackers, the kind with the seeds on them. He always had the good crackers. He also, I noticed when we arrived, had set the kitchen table for 6, including a booster seat he had clearly borrowed from somewhere for Poppy, and a small plate of those crackers arranged beside her setting. Griffin and Renata arrived 8 minutes after us. I heard their car in the driveway and watched through the kitchen window as they walked up the front path. Griffin had his hands in his pockets. Renata had her hair done. She was wearing the polished surface she always wore. When they came in, she greeted me with the warmth of someone who had also rehearsed this. Good to see you. Can you believe how fast October is going? I said something back that I can't recall. Joel shook Griffin's hand. Poppy ran to show Griffin the drawing she'd made, something she described as a horse, but which was, I noted privately, more atmospheric than representational. Griffin crouched down and studied it with genuine attention. He was good with her. He had always been good with her. I held on to that. My mother put food on the table. My father came in from the back of the house and stood at the head of the table and didn't sit down. I want to say something, he said, before we eat. My mother looked at him. Renata looked at him. Griffin shifted in his chair. My father was 63 years old and had the build of a man who had done physical work for most of his life, before age made it less practical. He wasn't a large presence in rooms usually. He was quiet in the way that certain people are quiet, not because they have nothing to say, but because they have learned to choose carefully. He stood at the head of that table and he looked at all of us, and then he looked at Poppy. I want to start with you, he said to her. He reached across and put his hand briefly on top of her small one. I'm sorry you didn't get to see Owen on his birthday. You were going to see him. Poppy looked at him with the seriousness she reserved for important things. That's okay, Grandpa, she said. We had the pancakes with the syrup jug. He smiled at her. I know. Joel told me. He straightened back up. He looked at Griffin, and then at Renata. What happened on Friday was not an accident, he said. I know that, and I think everyone at this table knows that. Renata made a phone call. You knew about it, he said to Griffin, and didn't say anything. He paused. That's not something I can chalk up to bad timing or miscommunication. That's a choice. Renata opened her mouth. My father held up one hand. Not a sharp gesture. A quiet one, but absolute. I'm not finished, he said. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside I could hear the neighbors' wind chimes. Poppy had gone still the way children go still when they understand that something is happening, even if they can't name it. Your sister, he said to Griffin, drove 40 minutes. She had Poppy in a dress that she'd been looking forward to wearing for 3 weeks. She had a gift in the trunk. She had told that little girl every single morning that she was going to see her cousin, and she got a phone call on the way there. He said it plainly, like a man reading from a document he had been studying for a long time. Not angry in a way that performed. Angry in the way that was heavier than performance. And Griffin, you let that happen. You could have called your sister on Thursday. You could have called her a week ago. You chose not to. Griffin looked at the table. My father looked at Renata. I don't want to embarrass you in front of your family, he said. That's not the intention of this conversation. But I am going to be honest with you. This family has a pattern of protecting certain people from the consequences of their decisions, and I have been part of that pattern by saying nothing, by deciding it wasn't the right moment. He looked at my mother briefly. We have both done that. My mother looked at her hands. My father reached into the breast pocket of his shirt and pulled out a folded envelope. He set it on the table, in front of Griffin. I'd been planning to give you this at Christmas, he said. The deed to the lake property. Your grandfather built that place. It was meant to be shared by this family. I was going to sign it over to you and your sister equally. He paused. I've spoken with my attorney and that arrangement is still going forward, but I want it said out loud, in front of everyone, that if I ever find out that your sister or her family have been made to feel that they are less than full members of this family, by anyone, for any reason, I will revisit every arrangement I have made. He said it without raising his voice, Asin. That was the thing about him. He never needed to. Renata was very still. She was doing something with her expression that I could not fully read. It was the look of a person who is recalculating very rapidly. Griffin looked at me. His face was doing something complicated. Something I hadn't seen on it in a long time, maybe not ever, which was the expression of a person who is seeing a thing they probably knew was there, but had successfully avoided looking at. I didn't think it would matter this much to you, he said. His voice was low, not defensive. Just honest, which surprised me. She's 4, I said. I wasn't angry when I said it, I was tired. She's 4 and she'd been looking forward to it for 3 weeks and you knew. He nodded once. There wasn't much else to do with that. My father sat down. My mother served dinner. Renata said almost nothing through the meal, which was its own kind of answer. Poppy ate crackers with the focused satisfaction of someone who has accomplished something. At one point she leaned over to Griffin and informed him in a confidential whisper that Carrot had been practicing for Owen's party, and was disappointed but would recover. Griffin nodded very gravely and said he would let Owen know. We left before dark. Poppy fell asleep before we reached the highway. Joel drove. I sat with my hands in my lap and watched the road. He changed his will, I said. Or he will, the property. Joel absorbed this. Something in him settled. Your dad's been paying attention for a while, I think, he said. I think so, I said. I leaned my head against the window. and looked at the dark fields passing alongside the highway, and thought about my father standing at the head of that table, envelope in his breast pocket, speaking in that quiet absolute way of his. Thought about him putting his hand over Poppy's, about the booster seat he had found somewhere, and the crackers he had arranged next to her plate. There were things I wanted to say out loud that I wasn't ready to say yet. About years of loading my own trucks. About the calls my parents had taken from Griffin that became the plan, and the calls from me that became a conversation. About the way self-sufficiency can be mistaken for not needing if the people around you are looking for a reason to mistake it. I knew I would eventually say those things to my father sitting somewhere with coffee, in the way that he and I had started to build slowly toward after dinner, not yet, but soon. Griffin texted me 2 days later. It was short. It said, "I should have called you. I'm sorry." He didn't explain more than that, which I appreciated. Explanations would have required me to weigh them, an apology without one left room for something simpler. I replied, "I know. Thank you." Renata sent a longer message a week after that. It was carefully worded in the way her words always were, and it said things like, "I realize I have been protective of our little family unit in ways that weren't fair to you." I sat with it for several days. There was something real in it beneath the careful construction. Something that had maybe taken some effort to get to. I wrote back and said I appreciated her sending it, that I wasn't ready to move forward as if nothing had happened, but that I was open to something different than what we'd had. That if there was going to be a relationship, it would have to be built on different ground. She responded with one line, "I'd like to try. I'm not sure yet what to do with that. I'm holding it carefully, the way you hold things that could be fragile. The wooden duck is still in our garage. Joel suggested we save it for when Griffin and Renata have their next baby, which they've mentioned wanting." I said maybe? Maybe is what I have right now for a lot of things, and I've decided maybe is enough. Owen's 1-year portraits arrived in my email last week. Renata sends a lot of photos, I'll give her that. And there was one of him sitting in the grass with a look of pure astonishment at something off camera, which Poppy said was obviously a bug, and I think she's right. He has the same look he had in the photo we put in the book, the one where Poppy kissed his forehead. Surprised at everything, still figuring out what world he landed in. I showed Poppy the portraits on my phone while she was eating breakfast. She looked at them very seriously, all of them, and then handed the phone back to me. "When do I get to see him?" she said. "Soon," I said, and this time I knew it was true. She nodded and went back to her cereal. The morning light came through the kitchen window the way it does in October, low and gold and making everything look warmer than it is. I sat at the table with my coffee, and I thought about pancakes with the syrup jug, and a little girl in a green dress, who wore it everywhere because it deserved to see the world, and about the particular kind of quiet that settles after the thing you were afraid to name gets named by someone else first. It doesn't fix everything. I know that. The tilt doesn't correct itself overnight, and years of letting things accumulate don't disappear because one person stood up at a kitchen table and said so. But there is something different now in the way my father calls, in the way Griffin picks up when I text. It's in the small and incremental way that things sometimes change when someone finally decides to say out loud what everyone has been pretending not to see. I notice it. I'm letting myself notice it. And some mornings when Poppy is still asleep and the house is quiet, I sit on the front porch with my coffee, and I think about that October afternoon in the pharmacy parking lot, right after the call, when Joel just pulled over without being asked and put the car in park and waited. He didn't say it was going to be okay. He didn't try to fix it. He just sat there, which was the only right thing to do, and somehow was also enough. I think about that a lot, actually. How sometimes enough is exactly enough.